The world knows him as the unstoppable force on the pitch, the record breaker, the 5-time Ballon d'Or winner, the legend whose name is chanted from Madrid to Manchester, from Turin to Riyadh. But on the morning of April 18th, 2022, Cristiano Ronaldo was not a football god. He was not invincible. He was not the titan we've come to idolize. He was just a father, a grieving father. And for the first time in his towering, seemingly untouchable career, the world saw him in his most human form, heartbroken, vulnerable, and shattered. That morning, Cristiano posted a message that stunned the world. It is with our deepest sadness we have to announce that our baby boy has passed away. It is the greatest pain that any parents can feel. Only the birth of our baby girl gives us the strength to live this moment with some hope and happiness. It was supposed to be a day of joy. Ronaldo and his partner, Georgina Rodriguez, were expecting twins. Fans around the globe had followed Georgina's pregnancy with excitement, celebrating alongside the couple when they announced the news on Instagram months earlier. 2 new lives, 2 new joys to join their growing family. Everything seemed perfect, but fate, in all its cruelty, changed everything in an instant. Only one of the twins survived, the baby girl Bella Esmeralda. Her brother, whose name was never made public, passed away during childbirth. The grief was unimaginable. The news rippled to the football world like an earthquake. Fans, players, clubs, and even bitter rivals stopped in their tracks. Social media flooded with messages of support. Manchester United issued a statement offering their condolences. Real Madrid, Juventus, Sporting Lisbon, every team Ronaldo had ever touched, paid tribute. Even the fiercest critics fell silent in respect. But one moment stood above all. On April 19th, 2022, just a day after the announcement, Manchester United faced Liverpool at Anfield, a historic rivalry, a clash of giants. But that night at the 7th minute, Ronaldo's iconic jersey number, the game paused. Something extraordinary happened. The crowd of 50,000 stood as one. Applause thundered through the stadium. Liverpool fans, known for their fierce loyalty, sang, "You'll never walk alone," not for one of their own, but for Ronaldo, for a grieving father, for a man who, for once, was not a symbol of dominance, but of pain. It was one of the most powerful moments in modern football history. Rivals united not by competition, but by compassion. And Ronaldo, watching from home with his family, later posted, "Me and my family will never forget this moment of respect and compassion." But behind those words was a depth of pain no applause could heal. Because while the world was grieving with him, Ronaldo was beginning the hardest journey of his life. One that wouldn't be measured in goals or trophies, but in the quiet, invisible battle of carrying on after unthinkable loss. At home, things were different. Cristiano had always been known for his intensity, his drive, his obsession with perfection. But now all that felt small. The mansion in Manchester, normally filled with laughter and the buzz of 5 children, was eerily quiet. The nursery prepared for the twins stood as a haunting reminder of the life they had planned, and the one that never came to be. Georgina was recovering physically from the delivery, but emotionally, she was devastated. Her Instagram had once been filled with smiles, vacations, celebrations. Now silence. The woman who once proudly shared glimpses of their family life had nothing to say. And Cristiano? He shut the world out. He didn't train. He didn't post. He didn't smile. Even his mother, Dolores, said later that she had never seen him like that. Ronaldo, the man who had faced boos from 80,000 opposing fans, the man who had stood tall through scandals, pressure, and scrutiny, was undone. But then something changed. Not overnight, not dramatically, but slowly. Cristiano began to reemerge, not as the indestructible athlete the media portrayed, but as something much more powerful. A father choosing to live again for the children who still needed him. For Cristiano Jr., his eldest son, who looked up to him not just as a footballer, but as a hero. For Eva and Matteo, his twins born via surrogate. For Alana Martina, his daughter with Georgina. And now, for Bella Esmeralda, the baby girl who survived the unthinkable. Her cries, her tiny heartbeat, became the rhythm that pulled Ronaldo back from the edge. In those early days of grief, he would hold Bella close and whisper, not just stories, but promises. That he would be strong, that he would protect her, that he would never forget the brother she would never meet. Behind the scenes, he began to train again, not for the cameras, not for the fans, but because he needed structure, he needed purpose, and he needed to show his children what resilience looked like. And yet, there was one thing no one expected. Cristiano didn't go public. He didn't do interviews or talk shows. There were no exclusive tell-alls or emotional monologues. Instead, he went quiet. He donated, anonymously, to neonatal care centers in Spain and Portugal. He funded grief counseling programs for bereaved parents. He wrote private letters to other fathers who had lost children. There were no headlines, no praise, no cameras. But in private, Cristiano was doing something far more powerful than lifting a trophy. He was lifting others. This was the man the world thought they knew, the icon, the machine. But in the aftermath of his most personal tragedy, he revealed a different legacy, one not of goals and glory, but of love, loss, and the quiet courage it takes to keep living when your world is falling apart. And this was only the beginning, because what Cristiano Ronaldo did next, after losing his baby, would stun even those who had followed him from the very beginning. He was about to show the world what greatness really looked like. The stadiums roared, the cameras flashed, the chants never stopped. But behind the deafening applause and endless headlines, Cristiano Ronaldo was wrapped in something the world couldn't see. Silence. Because no amount of spotlight could reach where he was now, deep in the shadows of grief. The world had watched him lift Champions League trophies. They had memorized his celebrations. They had argued about whether he or Messi was the greatest of all time. But none of those things mattered anymore. Not to Cristiano. Not now. After the devastating loss of his newborn son, Ronaldo found himself in uncharted territory. Not on the pitch, but in his own heart. And perhaps for the first time in his life, there was no opponent to dribble past, no goal to aim for, no trophy waiting at the end of the pain. Only stillness, only sorrow. While fans awaited his return and pundits speculated about his career, Cristiano disappeared from public view. He didn't owe anyone anything, but still people wondered, where was he? Would he retire? Could he ever return the same? But those who were closest to him knew he wasn't thinking about football. He was thinking about how to breathe again. At home, life had split in two. On one side, the soft giggles of his surviving baby daughter, Bella Esmeralda. On the other, the deafening absence of her twin brother. The nursery that had been painted for two now only had one crib. The name they had chosen for their son was never spoken out loud again. Georgina, too, was navigating the labyrinth of grief, her body recovering from childbirth while her spirit ached for the child she could never hold again. Together, she and Cristiano tried to make sense of a tragedy no parent should ever have to face. Some nights, Cristiano would sit in Bella's nursery long after she had fallen asleep. He'd watch her chest rise and fall, mesmerized by the miracle of her breath. He'd wonder about the twin that never got the chance. Would he have looked like Cristiano Jr.? Would he have had his mother's eyes? There were no answers, only questions and quiet tears. But Ronaldo wasn't alone. Cristiano Jr., just 11 at the time, became an unexpected source of strength. Despite his youth, he recognized his father's pain. He hugged him more. He played quietly near him. He offered little words of comfort. Sometimes in silence, sometimes with the smallest gestures that meant everything. Cristiano had always been protector, the warrior. But now, his son was helping hold him up. Even Ronaldo's mother, Dolores Avero, moved in briefly, helping with the other children and supporting Georgina. She cooked meals. She cleaned. She sat beside her son without saying a word. She had lost her husband years ago. She knew grief when she saw it. But losing a child was different. It was unnatural. It bent the very rules of life. Cristiano didn't talk much during those weeks. His phone remained unanswered. His agent, Jorge Mendes, handled everything professionally. Clubs didn't press him. Managers respected the space. and those sponsors often crave visibility. Even they went silent out of respect. Still, the world continued spinning. Manchester United had games. Press conferences went on. Reporters speculated whether Ronaldo would return. Was his age catching up with him? Would he go to America? To Saudi Arabia? But none of that mattered, because Cristiano wasn't planning a transfer. He was trying to transfer his pain into purpose. During this time, Ronaldo began doing something unexpected. Not publicly, not for show, privately. He began reaching out to other grieving parents. Doctors and nurses at hospitals in Portugal and England were stunned to receive anonymous donations to neonatal care units. One hospital in Lisbon received a generous endowment for state-of-the-art incubators and grief counseling programs. Another in Manchester received funding for family support rooms, quiet places where grieving parents could sit, hold their child, and say goodbye. When a nurse recognized the name on the donation paperwork and reached out to thank him, the response was simple. This is not for recognition. This is for the ones who didn't get to stay. He didn't want headlines. He wanted healing. Cristiano had always believed in preparation. On the pitch, every pass, every shot, every run was calculated. But grief? Grief doesn't follow a training schedule. It arrives when you least expect it. While brushing your teeth, while driving past a hospital, while hearing a baby's laugh that doesn't belong to yours. And so he began therapy, not just for himself, but for his entire family. Cristiano and Georgina sat with grief counselors, experts in neonatal loss, and talked through the trauma. There were moments when Cristiano broke down mid-sentence, times when Georgina would simply sob and say nothing at all. But in those spaces, they were allowed to grieve, not as celebrities, not as public figures, but as parents who had lost a piece of themselves. And therapy helped. Bit by bit, the silence began to lift. Not completely, but enough for light to creep in. A month later, Cristiano did something symbolic. He returned to the pitch. His body wasn't at 100%. His mind was still somewhere between mourning and recovery. But he needed to do it, not because the world expected it, but because his son would have wanted it. It was an away game. The stadium was full. Opposing fans jeered the way they always had. But in the 7th minute, Ronaldo scored. He didn't celebrate. He simply pointed to the sky. There was no roar, no jumping, just a gaze upward and a whisper only he could hear. That was for you. That goal wasn't about football. It wasn't about Manchester United. It wasn't about records. It was about a father trying to honor his son the only way he knew how. From that moment forward, Ronaldo played differently. He wasn't as flashy. He didn't always chase the highlight reel. But there was something deeper in his movement, a hunger that wasn't about proving anyone wrong, but about holding on to something he had nearly lost: his family, his purpose, his balance. In interviews, he remained private, but in rare moments, he hinted at the change. Life teaches you things you don't want to learn, he once said, but you learn them anyway. He wasn't the same man anymore, and that was okay, because in the silence behind the spotlight, Cristiano Ronaldo wasn't becoming weaker. He was becoming something greater. A man remade by loss. A father still standing. A heart still beating. In the days after the tragedy, it would have been easy for Cristiano Ronaldo to crumble, to withdraw entirely, to fade into silence and let grief swallow everything. But something, or rather someone, kept pulling him back. Bella Esmeralda, the daughter who survived. Born on the same day her twin brother passed away, Bella represented both the darkest pain and the brightest hope in Ronaldo's life. She was the baby who made it, the reason he and Georgina could still find breath in the midst of heartbreak. But even the joy of her arrival was laced with grief. Every time Cristiano looked into her eyes, he saw the ghost of the son he lost. Every bottle fed, every tiny smile, every midnight cry. It all came with a question that would never be answered. What would it have been like with both of them? The early days of Bella's life were sacred. Ronaldo rarely left her side. Georgina, still recovering emotionally and physically, leaned on him as he anchored their home. And despite his status as one of the most recognizable athletes in the world, Cristiano's entire identity shifted. He was no longer just a footballer or the brand. He was a protector, a guardian, a man staring at life with new eyes. Georgina once wrote in a private letter, later shared in parts with a Spanish magazine. When I hold Bella, I feel joy and pain at the same time. She is the light that came from the storm. She is our blessing. But sometimes I look at her and cry, not because I'm sad, but because she carries her brother's spirit in her. And Ronaldo felt the same. He called Bella Miracle, not just because she survived, but because she gave them purpose again, in moments when he wanted to lock himself away. It was her voice that brought him back, her coos, her babbling, her gentle breathing in the middle of the night. She didn't know she had saved her father's life, but she had. Cristiano began documenting her milestones, not for public, but for himself. He kept a journal, something he had never done before. In it, he wrote letters to Bella, and sometimes even to the son he lost. One entry reportedly read, I promise you, my daughter, I will live with double the love for you and for him. You are both with me, one in my arms and one in my soul. His family noticed a change. Cristiano Jr. became more involved with his younger siblings. He'd feed Bella, rock her to sleep. Alana, now a proud big sister, would bring toys and place them gently beside Bella's crib. The family found healing not through forgetting, but through honoring. And they honored him, the baby boy who never got to see his first birthday. Every single day, Ronaldo added a new tattoo, discreet, a tiny pair of angel wings with the date April 18th, 22 beneath it. He never spoke about it publicly, but those closest to him said he'd often touch it just before stepping onto the pitch, close his eyes for a brief moment of connection. This wasn't about performance anymore. It was about presence. As weeks turned into months, Ronaldo began sharing subtle glimpses of Bella online. A photo of her wrapped in a soft white blanket, a moment of her sleeping in his arms. But always gentle, never flashy. The world had cheered for his goals. Now they were quietly cheering for his healing. In one post, he wrote, Our baby girl, you bring us joy in a time we never expected. You are strong, like your mother. You are loved beyond words. He began playing again with renewed energy, not the explosive kind from his early career, but a steady, determined kind. He didn't celebrate goals the way he used to. No more dramatic jumps. No more exaggerated poses. Now, each goal seemed quieter, more intimate, more for someone than for something. Teammates noticed his quiet focus. He still trained with intensity, still led by example, but there was a softness to him that hadn't been there before. He started asking about our families more. One teammate said, he talked about balance, about time, about making moments count. It was like something had opened his heart. And for fans, that vulnerability made him more human than ever. The CR7 they had idolized was no longer just a global superstar with statues and sponsorships. He was real now. Ronaldo and Georgina began slowly returning to their public lives. Interviews became possible again. Smiles returned to their Instagram pages, though never quite as bright as before. Behind every post was a shadow, but also strength. In one emotional interview months later, Ronaldo was asked how he had coped with losing a child. He paused. For the first time, he looked away from the camera and took a deep breath. Then he said, You never get over it. You just learn to carry it. My daughter, our little Bella, she's my light. But I carry my son too. And here, he tapped his chest. Every day, the world responded with empathy. Thousands of fans shared their own stories of loss. Parents from all over the globe sent messages. Some said Ronaldo's strength had inspired them to face their own pain. Others simply said, Thank you for showing us we're not alone. And that's when something shifted. Cristiano's tragedy wasn't just personal anymore. It became communal. He had unwittingly become a symbol, not of grief alone, but of how to survive it. Georgina, too, found healing through Bella. She began a project to support grieving mothers. She started speaking to women who had gone through similar heartbreaks, some in person, many through letters and messages. Our pain connected us, she said, and In that connection, we found strength. Together, she and Cristiano poured energy into Bella's first year of life, her first giggle, her first steps, her first birthday. On April 18th, 2023, they celebrated quietly. No public party, no extravagant displays, just family, a cake, a photo of her brother next to her high chair, one candle lit, and one candle left unlit, for the baby who never made it home. As Bella grows, she may never remember those early days of sadness, but she'll always know one thing. She was the reason her parents kept going. Cristiano may have won leagues, cups, and accolades, but in Bella Esmeralda, he found a kind of victory no medal could represent. The victory of enduring, of protecting joy in the face of sorrow, of loving again. And that, above all, is why the world will never forget what Cristiano Ronaldo did, not just on the pitch, but in the quiet aftermath of unimaginable loss. Cristiano Ronaldo had always been defined by greatness, by goals that defied logic, by trophies that filled cabinets across 3 countries, by the roar of millions whenever he scored. But as the months passed after the loss of his newborn son, it became clear that his most meaningful legacy would not be found in football. It would be found in the quiet strength of fatherhood, in the love that endured through grief, in how he chose to live after death touched his family. By the end of 2022, Ronaldo's career had reached a transitional phase. His departure from Manchester United, while dramatic in the press, was just a footnote in his personal story, because by then, Ronaldo had already made the most important decision of his life, to be fully present for his family. When he signed with Al Nassr in Saudi Arabia, the world saw it as a controversial move. A footballer of his caliber going to a lesser-known league? To many, it looked like a retreat, a downgrade. But for Cristiano, it was never about status anymore. It was about time. Time with Georgina, with Cristiano Jr. and the other kids, and especially with Bella Esmeralda, the daughter whose very existence had pulled him back from the edge of despair. In Riyadh, far from the intense spotlight of Europe, Ronaldo found something unexpected: peace. No more back-to-back matches across 4 competitions. No more constant media frenzy. Just football, family, and faith. He bought a quiet, elegant home with enough space for the children to grow without constant paparazzi. He enrolled them in schools that emphasized not just academics, but emotional development. He hired counselors, not because the children were struggling, but because he understood now that mental health is strength. His days started differently, not with the thunder of training alarms, but with Bella's laugh echoing down the hallway. Sometimes, he'd rise early just to sit by her crib and watch her sleep, still amazed that she had survived when the odds had seemed so cruel. In interviews, his language changed. He began talking more about balance, gratitude, and legacy, not the legacy of football records, but of values. "I used to think the most important thing was winning," he said in a rare sit-down. "But when you lose something that can't be replaced, you realize winning is something different. It's not trophies, it's moments." He became more vocal about issues that had once been off-limits, like grief, fatherhood, and faith. Though he never claimed to be religious in a traditional sense, Ronaldo often spoke about a deeper belief, that everything has a purpose, even if we don't understand it. And Bella grew. From infant to toddler, she bloomed in front of the world's eyes. Her smile, so similar to her father's, became a symbol of hope. She appeared in family photos, always cradled with gentle love. Her siblings adored her. Georgina called her our guiding light. And Ronaldo? He softened. Gone was the cold, hyper-focused exterior. In its place stood a man transformed, not weaker, not broken, but more human. At charity events, he began supporting causes close to his new values: neonatal care, bereavement support, mental health access for children. He uses influence not to sell products, but to heal. He met with grieving families. Privately, quietly. Some of them didn't even know he was coming. But he'd sit with them, often without cameras, just to say, "I know. I'm sorry. You're not alone." One mother later posted, "He didn't talk much. He let us cry. And when he left, he hugged me and said, 'He's still with you, just in a different way.' That moment changed me forever. Those stories began circulating, not because Ronaldo wanted attention, but because the people he helped couldn't stay silent. They were moved, not by his fame, but by his compassion, and yet he still played. On the pitch, his boots hadn't lost their fire. In Saudi Arabia, he scored wonder goals, drew sellout crowds, and inspired a new generation of young players. But now, every time he looked up after scoring, there was a pause, a look to the sky, a silent moment, a message for the one who should have been there. In his heart, every goal was dedicated, not just to the living, but to the lost. By 2024, fans began to speak about Ronaldo differently. No longer just the GOAT, no longer just the athlete, but as a father, a symbol, a man who had experienced the very worst life had to offer and chose to respond not with anger, not with isolation, but with grace. Georgina published a memoir later that year. In it, she described the night they came home from the hospital, carrying only one baby instead of two. She wrote, "I looked at him and asked, 'How do we do this?' He said, 'One moment at a time, one breath, one prayer.' I've never seen him more vulnerable. I've never loved him more." The memoir became a bestseller, not for scandal, not for glamour, but because it told the truth about pain and the strength it takes to survive it. Cristiano wrote the foreword. He ended it with one sentence. "This story is for the son I didn't get to raise, but who raised me into the man I am today." Today, when fans look at Ronaldo's legacy, they see more than goals and records. They see a man who once stood in front of millions with a broken heart and didn't hide it. A man who showed that grief is not a weakness. A man who chose love over bitterness. A man who redefined what it means to be strong. And Bella Esmeralda? She'll grow up with stories about her dad's greatness, about the crowds he moved, the games he won, the history he made. But the most important story she'll hear is the one about how she saved him, about how her first breath was enough to pull a man from the edge of despair, and how, even though her twin never came home, he is with them in every step, every heartbeat, every moment they choose joy over sorrow. Cristiano Ronaldo will always be remembered as one of the greatest footballers the world has ever seen. But long after the boots are hung up and the stadium lights go dark, there will remain a deeper truth, that when the game of life gave him its hardest challenge, he chose to stand. He chose to love. And that shocked the world.